So here we are, long form content, episode 14, cause development. In the short form, we just talked about the keys to cause development and why it's important. Here, we're gonna give you some examples of how to go through this in your PHA. So as we're pulling up here, you can see in the worksheet, we have a couple causes filled out already. When I go into a meeting as a facilitator, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna fill out as many causes as I can from the P&ID to help the team start to brainstorm the issues. Now you can see some of the deviations and parameters are left blank. That means that I didn't see a cause that was immediately evident to me on the P&ID. I gleaned this from the process description and just from my knowledge of the process and industry. But there are circumstances where if it's a process that I don't know that well, or I don't know the operation that well, there may be some causes that I don't identify. So for that reason, and the reason that I never want the team to feel like I did all the work for them, we never take out the extra deviations even though they're blank. Okay? As you can see in this, as we go through flow, temperature, pressure, level, the like-minded controls are with the like-minded deviations. So we have FIC 1, 2, 3 in flow. We have TIC 1, 2, 3 in temperature. So it seems pretty simple, right? You can put those temperatures in flow because as we'll see in the cause and in the deviation of it, it is a stoppage of the flow of cooling water. But as we talked about in the short form vid earlier in the earlier episodes and in this video, the real purpose of the cooling is to provide a temperature aspect to the reactor. So that's why we put it there. The first place someone would look for a runaway or an over temperature of the reactor would be in the temperature deviation. So that's why we put that cause there. And then in terms of uncommon causes, one thing that we've done is we've attached a couple links, and we'll go through really shortly just a couple of them to show you some incidents we've had in past industry based on these uncommon events. One thing that we're looking at here, the Pascagoula incident, these are all on CSB, by the way. CSB mentioned that this was from thermal fatigue or blocking in and causing a thermal expansion. This thermal expansion in the exchanger caused a leak of flammable material that caused a very large explosion at the site and impacted people. So the way that we protect against that, we'll talk about that in our safeguards episodes in more detail. But an obvious protection would be that we have some CARSIL programs or we have some valve management programs on those valves to make sure we don't block in exchangers. Another one here that we don't think of that often, we a lot of times on exchangers talk about internal leaks. Most of the time when we're talking about this with the team will bring up, this is the higher pressure source and it goes into the lower pressure source. What you're now seeing is an incident from Honeywell back a couple of years ago that in a chlorine vaporizer, even though the higher pressure side was the utility, they had a backflow of chlorine for some other circumstances, operations, modes, shutdowns, things that happen, where they migrated chlorine into the utility system. If the team were only looking at the high pressure pathway, they would never have caught this incident. This incident released chlorine to the site, thankfully not impacting anyone, even though this was released at night and it was hard to see. So for these types of things, you really want to think about not just necessarily what does the HAZOP or what does the PHA methodology say. The goal of this hazard review is actually to prevent incidents and make our employees and our community and our environment safer. It's not to say we'll always catch every cause, but when we're doing it, let's take basically some ideas from incidents that happen in the industry to help us when we're going through this, come up with some causes that could be relevant to the process and the site that we're looking at.